Okay, good morning. So we start now the second part of Sefer Yehoshua. As we explained, the first 12 chapters are about the wars conquering the land of Israel. And now it's a part that it's called Nachala, can be translated as inheritage, meaning what we have, now we should divide it between the different tribes. Right? This is the second part of the book. And some see this part as more boring, I would say, or I would like, at least we can say it's a little bit harder to learn because it's not stories, it's a lot of geography of the land of Israel. So there are long lists of cities, long list of places, and it's looked like a little bit more boring, I would say. And many tend to skip these chapters and go straight to the end of the book. There are some stories that appear again in the end of the book. I'm not saying we are not going to do that totally, but not. I try not to do that, and I will explain. I think that it's very important to at least read and be familiar a little bit also with those chapters, even though it looks like a little bit more boring. And the reason is, first of all, because it is written. If it was important enough to Hashem to write it in the Bible, it should be important enough for us to learn it, right? So first of all, it's written, right? So we should try to understand and learn everything that is written in the Tanakh. But also, I think the Talmud calls Sefer Yehoshua the value of Eretz Israel. It comes to teach us the value of Eretz Israel, and we should understand that Eretz Israel, it's not only spiritual, abstract idea. It's a real place with hills and mountains and valleys and rivers and cities and fields and everything. It's a real place. The holiness of the land doesn't mean it doesn't have body, right? So we know that everything in this world have like the spiritual part and the material part, the soul and the body. And Eretz Israel has body. It also has soul. It's something holy. When we go there, we get inspired, and there are certain mitzvot that can be done only in the land of Israel. So it has some spiritual aspect or dimension, but it also has real practical dimension. You can say that in the last generation, the studies of Sefer Yehoshua, all the Bible, but especially Sefer Yehoshua, made a big progress in that. Before, during 2,000 years of exile, of Galut, we didn't have any access to these places. And now, Baruch Hashem, there is access, and we can start try to understand exactly where are these places. So I'm not very knowledgeable in the new search, in the new study of the land of Israel. There's, again, a lot of, they are doing archaeology and the investigation of the name. Some of the names were kept in the Arab names of the villages in that zone. So it's a very interesting area of study, which I'm not very familiar and knowledgeable. But at least generally we should see part of that. So, so this is like a general introduction. We are not going to understand each city where it was, etc., but we do want to try to understand generally what the Bible is saying to us. That's first of all. Second of all, this part is divided to three. The first part, the chapter number 13, which we are going to read now, is about the days of Moshe Rabbeinu still. The part that Moshe Rabbeinu gave to the two tribes and the health. After that, we have the first division of Yehoshua was only dedicated to Yehuda, Ephraim, and the other half of Menashe. And the last part is all the other 7 tribes. So this is the 3 stages. We would try to understand why it's divided to 3 stages. After all those introduction, let's start reading the book, the chapters. So it says, the Yehoshua Zaken Baba Yamim. Yehoshua was old, advanced in years. The translation here, of course, is not very exact, or at least its interpretation. It says Ba Yamim. How do we usually translate Yamim? Days. Advance in days, not in years. Even though sometimes in the Bible they use the word Yamim as years. It appears sometimes, but literally days mean yamim. Yamim mean days. And what does it mean, advance in years? We can say it's old, right? But it already written that it was old. Joshua was old, but by yamim, advance in years. Why to say that twice? Why just don't say he was old? We will speak about it when we finish the verse. And Hashem said to him, you have grown old, you are advanced in years, and very much of the land still remains to be taken possession of. This is criticism. Hashem is reproaching him, rebuking him for not doing. That's the way Chachamim read it. They said, you are already old, and you didn't do all what you have to do, right? And well, we talked about the reason for Yehoshua and why it's not considered something good. Okay, so anyway, Hashem telling him you are not okay with that. It's a verse that comes to criticize Yehoshua, but I think that the word Baba Yamim that we mentioned before, it's not criticizing Yehoshua, it's the other way. Because when we look on the Bible, all the Bible, these terms, Baba Yamim, appears 3 times. Once, the first one, about Avraham Avinu. Yeah, when he sent Eliezer to look for a wife for Yitzchak. So this is the first time. The second time is here. Yehoshua was Zaken Baba Yamim. And the third time was David HaMelech. In the first chapter of Sefer Melachim, David was very old and he was cold. He couldn't hit himself. So yeah, it's an interesting story that we are going to see. What has these 3 cases in common? Why in these places it's mentioned that it was Baba Yamim? First of all, what is the meaning of these terms, Baba Yamim? Well, literally mean that he had many, many days. We can say, and that's maybe the Zohar and some Farshim say, how do we measure our life? Usually we measure our life by times. I was in the college, I was in high school, I was in yeshiva, I was in the army. There are different times. In this time, in these 3 years, that's what I did. Because I can not remember what I did each day of my life, right? So usually I measure my life in times. And I have this years in Edmonton and this year in Canada, right? So you are talking about times. Because usually we cannot evaluate something that is valuable in terms of days. Not every day is used in the optimal way. I can say that in these 3 years, I could achieve that and that, these achievements. Or in this time in my life, I could done that and that. But when we are talking about great people, many times, what makes them great is the ability to use in the optimal way each day of their life. It's advanced in days, so what it says, Baba Yamim, meaning that he could use in the appropriate way each day of his life. There wasn't any day that was wasted. That you say, this day, I didn't use it properly, right? So only 3 people in all the Bible were mentioned in these terms, to say that these people were special in that all the life until this point were optimally used, right? They could use them in the proper way. But also it's related to old days, being old. What we can say that I think that these 3 cases that I mentioned just now, first of all, what were the ages of the people in this time? Avraham Avinu was 135 when it happened, according to Chachamim. How many years left for him to live? 30.
Oh, 30.
Yeah, it was 130, excuse me, it was under 30, it was until 175, so 35 years. He had still many years to live, right? Yehoshua here, according to Chachamim, again, is around 90. He passed away in the age of 110, so he still has 20 years to live. David HaMelech apparently was in the last year of his life, and he was, how old was he when he passed? He was, so can you say 70 is old? No, right? Joe, not at all. Why the Bible told that David HaMelech was old? It wasn't so old. Man, I understand Avraham, 135, I can consider it as old. 90 years, I can consider as old. So it's not like it's the end of the days of your life because you still have 30 years to live. It's not like you are very, very old, because David HaMelech is not so old. I think that all these cases are around replacement. I finished my good days, and now we are going to look for the next generation. Right? So we're talking about Abraham, we are looking now for a wife for Yitzhak, because Yitzhak is going to be the one who continues the way of Abraham. When we talked about David HaMelech, you can see that in this chapter, the first chapter of Sefer Melachim, it's starting the wars about who's going to be the next king. Not wars, the fights, the battles between the sons of David, who is going to be the next king. So we can say that Baba Yamim is resuming the good time of the person, what he did like in an efficient way, like I mentioned before. Each day was used properly until now. From now on, maybe spiritually, it's going to be used every day, but not practically. Practically, you are going to take a step back, right? Until now, that's what you did. But now we are going to replace it. So we can say that this word from one side come to elevate Yehoshua, or to praise Yehoshua for being so, to live so meaningful life, very full, meaningful life, but also said, you know what, now you should step back. And one of the problems of leaders many times that they don't know when to step back. Someone must tell them, you know, you've done enough, go back, you're too old, or we need new spirit. Many times there were very, very good leaders for some time, and then come another time that it needed other leaders. For example, I would give an example of Churchill. Was the right person in the war, but immediately in the elections after the war, he lost, right? Even though he was so successful in the war, but it wasn't the right guy. Apparently, that was the people of England thought. He was the right guy for the war. He wasn't the right guy for the peace days, and it wasn't so peace, but yeah. So what I'm trying to say that sometimes you should understand you are Baba Yamim. You were very good until now, but we need something else now. Like Moshe Rabbeinu also. Moshe Rabbeinu was a perfect guy for the desert. Apparently, according to Hashem, he wasn't the right guy to enter the land of Israel. They needed a change, right? They needed a change of leadership. It doesn't mean that the leader wasn't good. It just will leave other times, other needs, other character of the people.
So Baba Yamim means transition?
I think that's what I understand, because according to these three cases, it's not saying that you weren't good until now, just we need something else from now on, right? That's what I think. And it says, "V'aretz nishara harbe meod lerishta." So like we said last time, there was like contradiction or different tone until now and from now on. Until now, it's looked like they won everybody, they took everything was great. And now I understand it's not so easy. There's a lot much to do, and we haven't done it yet, and it's going to be a long process. I would say that it's similar a little bit to what happened in Israel nowadays, in modern Israel, in the War of the 6 Days. The War of 6 Days was a great success, of course. As you know, in 6 days, all the old land came back to us, and Yehuda and Shomron, and Gaza, and Sinai, and the Golan Heights, all the land, all the promised land came back to our land. It was very, very quick in our hand. But now to reconnect with these territories, it's something that we haven't done yet until now, right? We are how many years after that? 60 years, right? One thing is taking it generally, and other things is be connected to every part of it, to every meter of it, right? There's still people living there, and it's their house. You can't just throw them away, and they are fighting for the land also. And we are not very knowledgeable of all of these places. We are not very connected. So they have thought about maybe we should give up these parts. I'm not entering now to the political question, what we should do. I'm just saying that's different between taking the place and connected to the place. So maybe Yehoshua could arrive to the north, to the south, to the east. All this land was under his control generally. But the details, the places themselves, הארץ נשארה הרבה מאוד לרשתה. A lot, very much still remains to take in possession of. Because taking generally and taking in details, it's not the same things. And now the Tanakh starts to give the details about what are the places that left. We can see that it's mainly 2 zones, 2 places in the land of Israel that left, and these places were left until the destruction of the temple almost, or until, let's say, until the days of Shlomo at least, right? So let's see. This is a territory that reminds all the districts of the Pelishtim and all those of Geshurim. Like we saw last time, we are talking about the southwest of Israel. All this, but almost until Jerusalem, right, is a zone of the Pelishtim, right? Near the sea, down to Egypt, all this. So they start to give details about it. From the Shichor, which is close to Egypt. Apparently, Shichor is a Nilo? Nilo? Yeah, Nilos. How do you say? Nile. From the Nile, or at least the eastern part of the Nile. So from Egypt. So apparently, from there, it should have been ours. It wasn't ours. Well, after, no, I'm talking about the Bible time. There was never, I mean, they never arrived to take that. It says that all the rest, the other going to do, but that it never was done, right? So from the Shichor, which is close to Egypt, to the territory of Ekron on the north. North meaning relatively to Egypt. It's not so north. Kriyat Ekron, it's nowadays, it's more or less 1 hour from Jerusalem to the south, or 1 hour and a half to the south, right? Ekron.
Yes, near Rehovot.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's not it's not so south, right?
That's where we're going for the wedding.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. So all this zone belongs to the Plishtim. Are accounted Canaanite, namely those of the 5 lords of the Plishtim. The Gazitas, so it means one lord was in Gaza, right? Gaza. The Ashdodites, the Ashkelonites, the Gitites, the Ekronites. Those and those of the Avim. How many do we have here? Gaza, Ashdod, Ashkelon, Gat, and Ekron, and Avim. So it's 6. Right? No, Avim is other nation. It wasn't the Plishtim. So there was 2 nations there. The Avim, apparently, it's not very clear who they were. They mentioned several times, but apparently a little nation that was wandering this zone, not in one place. Anyway, yeah, it appears in the Tanakh sometimes, but it's not very clear where they live exactly. Anyway, all this the part of the zone, and then it says on the south, farther, all the Canaanite country from Me'ara and of the Tzidonim to Afek at the Amorite border. So now, where is the Tzidonim? It's Lebanon, so we're going to the north. We talked until now about the south, and now we are going to the north. Sidon, it's up here, near the sea, but here, right? We don't see, I mean, yeah. And it say until the Amori. Where is the Amori? Amori is the east, right? So we are talking now about all the north, the far north, from the sea to the east part. Right, so these are the 2 zones: the far south, far not so far, and the far north. Okay, and then it starts to give details about that. And the land of the Gevilites, with the whole valley of the Lebanon, from Baal Gad at the foot of Mount Hermon to Levo Hamat on the east. So all the part of the north from the west to the east, all with all the inhabitants of the hill country from the valley of the Lebanon to Misrefot Maim. We talked about this term, Misrefot Maim. Do you remember? Misrefot Maim means burning water.
And they make salt.
Why should we burn water? To make salt, right? So it was near the sea. Again, we're talking about the Hermon. Hermon is in the east of the north, and the Misrefot Maim should be in the west. We saw that Yehoshua arrived until there, but it still called it the remaining land, the Eretz HaNisheret, because he arrived, but he didn't take it, right? So until now is the places that were left, and then Hashem continues saying to Yehoshua, you have only it said, I myself will dispose those nations for the Israelim. You have only to apportion their lands by lot among Israel, as I commanded you. So who's going to take these places? Hashem said, I by myself. So we see the main problem of the next book. The next book is Sefer Shoftim. And the main problem is that we don't have a leader. Hashem said, I by myself. So we are not seeing here any other leader in the name of and after Yehoshua. Again, I don't know if it was a fault of Yehoshua or something like that, but there weren't anyone that after Yehoshua could replace him. It's another problem of big leaders. Many times after a big leader, we don't have anyone that would enter to his shoes, right? Can continue him. And Hashem said, I will do that. I will be the one who will help the Am Israel. And Sefer Shoftim mentioned several times, Vayamim ha'em en melech b'Yisrael. In these days, there's no king in Israel. Is it a good thing or a bad thing not having a king? We can say it's a bad thing, right? We don't have someone to unite everybody, to lead everybody. From the other side, when Hashem talked with Shmuel about Shmuel say to Am Israel speak with Shmuel and ask him for having a king, Shmuel is very upset. He said, Hashem is your king. We can say that the ideal times, the most elevated time, we don't need a king. When everybody is okay, behaving like he should, a king is something that it's too much, right? If everybody is managing well in the city, in the villages, they can manage well. And I said, we don't need one king. But when there are problems, when there are conflicts and people are not behaving the way they should, we need this kind of power. So why there weren't anyone to replace Yehoshua? Maybe because he didn't prepare anyone, but maybe it was also important. And here I return to what I said last chapter. We saw that the kings of the Canaanim compared themselves to Hashem. Melech Yericho Echad. Like Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Right? Everybody thought he is the one, he is Echad, he is like Hashem. And this we talked about that the kings have too much powers. They think themselves as gods. So it was important to have time, I think maybe it was important to have time without any leader, without any too much power in the hands of one person. And also only after a while, we're talking about around 400 years, they were developing, there were changes, progress, and then after all this time, start the times of the kings in Israel. So it's a long shot. We will see that B'ezrat Hashem in 2 books from now.
So it's 400 years between Joshua and the first king?
Yes, more or less. All the times of the Shoftim, there weren't any king. So all the next books, Sefer Shoftim, until the first king was Shaul, right? So many years after that. So Hashem said to Yehoshua, I will do the process, right? The part of taking what it rests, but you should divide the land, even though it's not in their hands. Meaning, you say to Shevet, I don't know, Yehuda, you are going to be there. Yeah, but there's people there. Yeah, so that's going to be now your job. You only divide it. You say that this belongs to that, this belongs to that, and then after that, they will be obligated to take it. So why to do that now? Because now you say, this is your responsibility. This is your part of the land. This is your responsibility to take it, right? So then what Hashem told him, therefore divide this territory into hereditary portions of the 9 tribes and the half tribe of Menashe. Now the Reuvani and the Gadi, along with the other half tribe, has already received the shares that Moshe assigned to them on the east side of the Yarden, as assigned to them by Moshe, the servant of God. Right, so we start from the days of Moshe, like we saw in the last chapter. In the last chapter, we talked about the wars. It starts with the wars of Moshe and continue with the wars of Yehoshua. Here, when we talked about the inheritance, it starts again with in the heritage of Moshe. Moshe was the one who started, and Yehoshua only continued. But when Yehoshua continued, it also gave other meaning to what Moshe did. Right, so everything is one long story. So first of all, he speaks about the places that Moshe already gave to the tribes. So you can see here again in the map, from Aroer on the edge of the Wadi Arnon. Aroer, you can see down Aroer here, right? It's in the south border of the other side of the Yarden. Okay, this is the border to the south. Va'ir asher betoch hanachal, there was a city inside, in the middle of the Wadi, the entire tableland, from Edeva to Divon, embracing all the towns of King Sichon of the Emori, who had reigned in Heshbon, up to the border of the Ammonim. Farther Gilad, the territories of the Geshurim and the Maachim and all the Mount Hermon. So it's going from the south to the north, right? All this zone. And the wall of Bashan up to Salach, the entire kingdom of Og, who had reigned over Bashan at Ashtarot and Edrei. So there were two kings, Sichon in the south part and Og in the north part. He was the last of the remaining Rephaim. These were defeated and depossessed by Moshe. Also in this part, there were some that were left, but the Israeli failed to depossess the Geshurim and the Maachim, and Geshur and Maachat remain among Israel and to this day. No hereditary portion, however, was assigned to the tribe of Levi, the portion being the fire offering of the Eternal, the God of Israel, as God spoke concerning them. So here we start, it's mentioned the first time, it's going to be mentioned at least 3-4 times, that Shevet Levi didn't receive any part in the land of Israel, not in the eastern part, not in the western part. Do you remember why? Why Shevet Levi didn't receive any part in the land of Israel? It says here more or less the reason. Hashem unachalato is going to receive parts from Hashem. What would he receive from Hashem? What did Shevet Levi receive from Hashem? What? Masrot, right? Masrot is a portion from the harvest. Can you live inside Masrot? No. So where would they live?
They live in 48 cities. No?
Yes, of course. So what I'm trying to say, it says that Hashem gave them part instead of Nachala, but the part that he gave, it's not a place to live, right? So the Nachalot is like the Parnasa. You are going to work in the temple, and you are going to get the gifts from Am Israel in order to be able to live. But you also need physical place. The physical place, like you mentioned, were 42 towns inside the rest of the Am Israel. So that means that Shevet Levi didn't receive a zone, an area like all the other tribes, but each one of the tribes gave some cities, around 3-4 cities, to the Leviim. What is the meaning of that? Why is that like that? Why is it like that? So we assume that the tribe of Levi was responsible of the connection with Hashem. Right? This is the purpose of Shevet Levi. You are going to walk in the desert, but you're the one who's going to learn Torah, like it says in the bracha of Levi, Yoru mishpatecha liYaakov, v'toratcha liYisrael, yasimu ketorah be'apecha, v'chayei mizbachecha. So they have two jobs. The first one is to teach Torah to Am Israel, and the second to work in the Mizbeach, in the Bet HaMikdash. So when we need our teachers among us, it's not like they live in Jerusalem and not connected to everybody. In each tribe, you have 3-4 cities that are center of Torah. So you send your children to learn there, or if you have questions, you go to the city, or if you need a bedding, you go to the city. So the destiny of Shevet Levi is not to be concentrated in habitate the land, it's but to give the spiritual part inside in Am Israel. So it's like centers of spirituality inside each one of the tribes. So also in the eastern part of the Yarden, Shevet Levi didn't get anything. Now, after seeing generally the places that Moshe conquered and gave to these 3 tribes, 2.5 tribes, now we go to see that with details which each one of the tribes received. So again, I'm not going to explain too much about these places. It's say in the map more or less you can see. We're just going to read it. So Moshe assigned the following to the tribe of Reuven for the various clans. And it became theirs, the territory from Aroer at the edge of the Wadi Anon, and the town in the middle of the Wadi, up to Meidava, the entire tableland. Cheshbon and all its towns in the tableland, Divon, Bamot Baal, Bet Baal Meon. All these places and names are also names of Avodah Zarah, of idolatry. Baal was one of the names of the gods of the Canaanites, of the people of Canaan. So the names remind. We would see after that, in the next books, that also the influence reminded. And these 2 tribes, Reuven and Gad, were the first to disappear. They were disconnected, they were on the other side of the Yarden. The influence of the nation, of the culture, of the religion, of the people there was very strong, and after that, they just disappeared. And continue, Chazak, Kedemot, Yahat, Kedemot, Mefa'at, Kiryatayim, Sibma, and Zeret Shachar in the hill of the valley. This is a strange term. What does it mean? Hill of the valley. Hill or valley? It's not, it's contradict, right? Hill or valley.
Here inside the valley.
Yeah, so that's what Farshim says. There was a valley. Inside the valley, there was a little hill. I don't have good explanation, but I thought maybe it was like valley is something down, low, and hill is something high. So even in the places where it's low, you can build something higher. So even in the other side of the Yarden, which is far from Jerusalem, from the holiness of Eretz Israel, you still can build a valley. But I mean, it's just something that I thought. Hara Emek, the valley, the hill of the valley. Okay, anyway, with Beit Peor. Peor, if you remember, was a place where the daughters of Midian seduced the sons of Israel, and there was a big sin of Baal Peor. Baal Peor is the name again of the idolatry, right? And that's this place also was to Sevet Reuven, the slopes of Pisgah and Bet Yeshimot. And all towns of the tableland and the entire kingdom of Sichon, the king of the Amori, who had reigned in Heshbon, for Moses defeated him and the Midianite chiefs, Evi, Rekem, Tzur, Hur, and Reva, who had dwelt in the land of princess of Sichon, as princess of Sichon, together with the others that they slew. The Israelite put Bil'am, son of Beor, the ogre, to the sword. So here it's mentioned the wars of Moshe Rabbeinu. There were 3 wars for Moshe Rabbeinu, Sichon and Ogar, 2 of them, and the third was with the Midianim. So the Midianim is all the story that we're going to read next parasha, or 3 parashot from now. Balak, or the story of Balak, if you remember. Yeah. It's going to be together. Okay. So if you remember the story, Am Yisrael arrived to Arvot Moab, to the son of Moab, and the king of Moab, Balak, was very worried about Am Yisrael. So he called the prophet Bil'am to curse them. And Bil'am came and tried to curse them. Instead of cursing, Hashem put blessing in his mouth, and he couldn't. So after that, he had an advice for them. He said to Balak, I can't curse them, but there is other solution for them. If you send your daughters to seduce them, Hashem, their God, hates this kind of thing, so they are going to be punished. And it works. Not only Moab sent, also Midian sent. There were more distant nation. It was farther from there. So they sent the daughters, and they were going after the daughters, and the daughters, after they were with them, they told them, you know what, this is my God, let's do something with him. And say that many people of Am Yisrael after that died for that sin. And Bil'am, that was all the advice of Bil'am HaRasha. That's what we say. So there's a lot to learn about that, but it says that finally Hashem asked Moshe Rabbeinu to take revenge of the Midianim, and there was the 3rd war of Moshe. Again, he sent Elazar, in this case, Pinchas ben Elazar. He sent Pinchas ben Elazar to the war, and they also defeated the Midianim, and that's what we see here. Now, here it's interesting, the name of Bil'am. Bil'am, I said, was a prophet. And here it's called Kosem. Kosem here translated, I don't know this word, Huger? Magic. It's not prophet. What is the difference between prophet and magic? We would say that you evaluate less magicians than prophet.
It's not true.
It's not true. But Bil'am had true prophecies. So the difference is that Bil'am, Chachamim say that Hashem wanted to have one prophet that is not a Jew, because all the other prophets were Jews. He was the only one who wasn't a Jew. But it shows you the difference. The prophecy or the supernatural powers of Bil'am wasn't the result of personal elevation, personal work, perfection. It's not that Bil'am was one who worked on himself, improve his character, improve his deeds, and then he arrived to the level of prophecy. He was one that received it like as a gift. Hashem gifted him with this talent of being able to connect with him. And it was a kosem, he wasn't a prophet. That's the reason it's written here like that. Anyway, all these places were in the Nachala of Reuven, The boundary of the Reuvenim was the edge of the Yarden, right here, more or less. I mean, above Yam HaMelach, the Dead Sea, Ugvul. That was a portion of the Reuvenim for the various clans, those towns with the villages. And then to the tribe of Gad, for the various Gadite clans, Moshe assigned the following. Again, now it's give you the, no, it's, I mean, I see that it's northern, not here, it's here, up here, okay.
Jordan.
Yeah.
Border, go to the border between Syria and on this.
No, it's much more the south.
South.
Yeah. Anyway, so now it starts to speak about that, and it becomes the territory, Chatzer, all the towns of Gilad, part of the country of Ammonim, up to Aroer, which is close to Rabbah, and from Heshbon to Ramat Mitzpah and Betonim, and from Machanaim to the border of Lidvir. Lidvir. In the valley, Bet Haram, Bet Nimra, Sukkot, and Tzafon. Sukkot we remember from Yaakov when he came back, but it was maybe other Sukkot because it was the other side of the Yarden. And the rest of the kingdom of Sichon, the king of Heshbon, down to the edge of the Yarden and up to the tip of the sea of Kinneret. Right, this is Kinneret, where I live in Israel, on the east side of the Yarden. That was a portion of the Gadim for the various clans. Those towns were with the villages. And to the half tribe of Menashe, Moshe assigned the following, so that it went to the half tribe of Menashe for its various clans, and became the territory. Machanaim, all of the Bashan, so this is far north already, Golan, and entire kingdom of Og, king of Bashan, and all of Chavot Yair in Bashan, 60 towns. We talked about Yair once, right? Yair ben Menashe. Yeah. Okay. And part of Gilad and Chatzer and Ashterot and Ederi, the royal cities of Og in Bashan, were assigned to the descendants of Machir, son of Menashe, to part of the descendants of Machir for the various clans. So the Machir has other families in the other side of the Yarden. Like we say that Menashe was a connection. Okay, we say something else about Menashe, just let's finish the chapter. Those then were the portions that Moshe assigned to in the steppes of Moab on the east side of the Yarden, but no portion was assigned by Moshe to the tribe of Levi, the Eternal, the God of Israel, in the portion as God spoke concerning them. Again, it repeats that even though it gave these places to these certain tribes, the cities of the Leviim weren't given yet. Right? They weren't given yet. So I want to add just another detail. We've already mentioned that there was a difference between Menashe and Reuven and Gad. And we can see that very clearly in Parashat Matot, that we are going to arrive soon again, that Menashe was in the beginning asking for this part of the land, right? It's Gad and Reuven were the two tribes that went to Moshe and said, we want to stay in the other side of the Yarden. And Menashe wasn't there in the beginning. Only in the end, Moshe himself is saying, and you are going to be part of them. So it's interesting, the Mishnah says that in the other side of the Yarden, in the eastern side of the Yarden, you don't bring Bikurim. What is Bikurim? Bikurim is the first fruits, and that you have to bring to the Bet HaMikdash, only from the land of Israel. But in the other side of the Yarden, you don't bring Bikurim. You also don't bring Trumot U'Masrot, meaning the holiness of this other part is lower than the western part. You can't do the mitzvot of Eretz Israel in this part. But the Gemara asks, why shouldn't we bring Bikurim? And the Gemara Yerushalmi, and it gives two reasons. The first reason, it says, it's not called Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash. Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash is the way the Torah prized the land of Israel, that it gives a lot of milk and honey. Honey in the Torah, it's not the bees' honey, it's the fruits' honey, right? The honey of the fruits, the dates, figs, stuff like that. So it says the quality of the fruits is not so good, so it's not appropriate to give it to the Bet HaMikdash. And then the Gemara give other reason. The other reason is that it says the land that I gave to you, not the land that you asked by yourself, right? You can see in all this chapter It says Moshe gave. Moshe gave. When we see in the next chapter, it doesn't say Yehoshua gave. It says this is the land that arrived to this tribe. This is the land that arrived to this tribe. So we can see that this part Moshe gave, and the other part Hashem gave. Why Moshe gave? Because they asked. Right? So we can see that the fact that they lived there wasn't according to the will of Hashem. Hashem wanted everybody to get in, but like they asked, Moshe gave them. So it was allowed. It's not wasn't allowed, but it wasn't the ideal way to do that. Chachamim ask, what is the difference between the first reason and the second reason? The first reason speaks about the quality of the fruits, and the second reason is because they asked. You can't bring bikurim because this land were given because you asked, not because Hashem gave it to you. What is the difference between these two reasons? The Gemara answers, the tribe of Menashe. The tribe of Menashe is also considered, according to the second reason, it considers the land of Israel. Why? Because Menashe didn't ask. Moshe, by order of Hashem, gave it to Menashe. So we can say that all the northern part of the land of Israel is a little bit, of the eastern side of the Yarden, is holier than the southern part. The Nachala of Menashe is holier than the Nachala of Reuven and Gad. We can see that today, Baruch Hashem, we have at least part of this land in our hands. All the Golan Heights is this part. It's other side of the Yarden, but it belongs to the land of Israel. Till now, at least, but Hashem also in the future, but for now. So meaning the part of Menashe is holier, is more connected to the western part of the Yarden, right? So this is what we can say about that. Okay, and then again, it repeats the fact that Shevet Levi didn't receive Nachala. There's another detail that I want to say about Shevet Levi, but Bezrat Hashem next class.
Rabbi,
Okay, yes.
on which side of the Yarden is Dan?
The tribe of Dan, so you can see that it has two parts. It has one where is Tel Aviv nowadays. All the zone of Tel Aviv, it's called Gush Dan.
So I was looking at the
Yeah, and there is another part in the north.
That's the one.
Yeah, so it is exactly in the Yarden. It's all the zone of it's called the sources of Yarden. It's not the Yarden itself starts here, and it has three rivers that built it. The Banyas, Chatzbani, and Dan.
Yeah, Dan.
So there are three rivers that unite together and becomes the Yarden. So why Dan received two parts? We're going to see that. It's a story. We're going to see it later. Okay. Yeah, not next week. I think it's Sefer Shoftim. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, so we stay about Dan, but it's in the middle. It's not in the other side of them.
Rabbi, what is the demarcation in Judaism, BC and C?
What is the what?
Before the Common Era, and I'm not referring to the.
Ah.
General thing. What is the demarcation?
No, it's the same. When we're talking about before Christ or after Christ.
Oh, it is the same.
When you say here, because it's just to make you idea what time we're talking about.
Oh, I see.
So it's just to help you understand.
Oh,
We don't have in Judaism BC or after C. Yeah, we just use it as a point of reference that we would understand what we're talking about. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.